Hi, we're not getting any sound over the video.
How's that? Does that work?
That's working. Thank you.
Understood. Great Mill Road is gonna be here too.
Oh, I read that. Not the right choice. Yeah.
Hey, folks, can you hear me all right?
Hey, Zach, how you doing?
I'm all right.
Feel okay?
I'm good. My daughter's ready to go back to the life.
Okay, all right.
Oh,
Oops. Appreciate that.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that.
yeah.
Because you have a Zoom policy.
It's just, it feels weird, I'm sure, because it's signed to
Well, I thought it was over now. It said he was not going to be available on my Zoom, but. Yeah, you still have enough. So you got Zach, you get Bill.
I just, for some reason, I wasn't notified it was here. Okay. They haven't heard from him.
So I take it this is a permanent change now here. Okay.
It's a nice room.
You're gonna tell us before you rip down town hall, right?
Well, I didn't.
Who's ripping in town?
Yeah, that's
It was,
not what we heard.
it was a sound thing.
Oh,
It's not
really?
in concrete,
That's
Hershey,
what I
until it's 100%. 100%, so let's not talk about
Okay, sorry.
it, right?
Wow.
Hey,
Oh,
we'll let
is that a
you,
good guess or what? Okay.
no, but
No,
we'll
it's
let
not
you,
even close.
we'll let you control the excavator when you, when it's
Hey,
time,
yeah,
if you
right.
want to. I'm gonna give it a good blast of light.
Everybody's intermediate there.
Yeah, no, that's, once they have them, they have everything.
So I can look my copy.
You said mold?
When I celebrate holidays, I'm always very quiet.
I will not.
I was not really excited for the celebration.
New Year.
That's it.
Just one, let's see. I feel like we should get you Adele for like a coffee card that we, every time we come, we should give them a stamp or. You know what I mean? They should get something for coming to, every meeting.
We have anybody here from the Northam or not? I'm sure.
Not-
Yeah.
We still got a couple
I guess
minutes,
the last.
so.
Okay.
They got added.
Yeah, they're
I
preliminary.
expected that last week.
Was it, yeah.
Yeah, we got it this time.
Yeah. Yeah. It's all coming back to me.
I don't know if it was. I mean, that was one for the trust. It's on the side of the wall. That's it. Yes. I wouldn't consider.
What's that?
How was tonight?
Eric.
Yeah, what's going on, huh?
Sections on the agenda, anybody curious?
All right, we ready to start? Why don't we rise and salute the flag? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Evening, everybody. This is the regular meeting of the planning board for Wednesday, September 7th at 7 o'clock. And we have a couple items on the agenda tonight to review, possibly some approvals and some other items we'll have to talk about. We do have a lot of new faces here in the room tonight, a lot of people tuning in. My name is Greg Zenzer. Again, I'm the chair of the planning board. We're going to start over here. Bernelli, you want to introduce yourself?
Bernal Bailey, member of the planning board.
Hershey Hirschkopf, member of the planning board.
And we do have two members joining us tonight. Bill Cole is joining us via Zoom, and Zach Noble is also joining us via Zoom. Gentlemen, you can see them from behind. You can just raise your hand right there. So they'll be joining us via Zoom. Let's see. Let's move on with our normal business of the evening. Is there anybody here in the public? We'll start here in the public that has anything they'd like to say, any public comments. So we'll put it out there. If there is anybody that wishes to speak to the planning board or make a comment to us, now would be the time here in the public, if there's anybody.
Is this the time we speak about the old business, or would we have a chance to talk about that?
You can state that now. Typically, it would be up to the board as to where we go in terms of the old business. In the past, when we're discussing items, we have allowed comment on that particular item. However, you know, it's up to you. So if you want to reserve time to speak there, I'll entertain some public comment when that comes.
Yeah, I think I'd like to do it when the
Sure,
project is
fair.
being presented.
Okay, fair enough. We'll
Thank you.
allow that. Is there anybody on Zoom that wishes to make a public comment? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on with the regular meeting, and Bill and Zach, I'm just gonna, can you guys you hear us okay?
Yeah, this room seems to be a lot better than the old accommodation, so I can hear you very clearly.
Thank you. Thank you. So the first item up on the agenda is the approval of the minutes. Has everybody had an opportunity to look at the August 17th minutes? And if everybody is satisfied with those, what we're going to be doing tonight is we are going to be doing roll call voting because we have a couple individuals joining us. Are there any planning board members wishing to make any comments on the August 17th minutes? Okay, so if there's no changes to the minutes, then do I have a motion to accept the August 17th
I
minutes?
move we accept the August 17th minutes as presented.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll again take a vote via roll call. I'm going to start on Zoom. Bill?
Aye.
Zach?
Aye.
Greg is aye.
Aye.
Okay, that's unanimous for those minutes. All right, moving on, the first item of new business is regarding MSP 2207. And Hershey, yes.
So I would like to say that I was contacted by in August sometime via email. I said I really couldn't comment on substance, but I did say, check out the ordinance and pointed something out. But I have a copy of the email that I'm going to present to you. And though I think I could be fair, I also feel like I should offer to recuse myself.
Okay, thank you. That being said, we have an offer to recuse. Can I have a motion from the board to accept the recusal of Hershey from the planning board as we move forward with this discussion item? Anybody like to make? Okay, I'll second that. Again, being Zoom, we'll ask for a roll call vote. Being no further discussion, Burnell?
Aye.
Greg will vote aye. And Bill Cole
Aye.
and Zach.
Aye.
And Hershey, obviously.
I abstain.
Okay, thank you. So for the purposes of this conversation, I will ask if you could
Yes.
sit in the audience. Thank you. All right. So now that we've dispensed with this item of business, what I'm going to ask now is that we move on. And hey, Hershey, that's a new seat for you. Better not heckle us.
Hey, what's up with this? Okay.
All right, so board members, as I said, MSP 2207 Caperna LLC 406 Main Street. What we're being asked to do tonight is to review a sketch plan and a change of use application for a proposed new restaurant and a beer and wine garden at 406 Main Street. For those here and in the audience here and on Zoom, that is the former Rio's Barber Shop. Are the owners and the individuals presenting that here tonight?
We are.
Sure, sir. So I would ask if you could just get up and identify yourself again for purposes of this meeting. Sketch plan process.
Sure.
It is the first step in the process that we would ultimately be going through. So I would turn it over to you. And if you could just give us your name.
Yes,
Yeah.
Sam
And
Flinkstrom,
Roxanne Poulin.
Okay,
representing Caponera LLC, 406 Main Street.
great. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. So I'm going to turn it over to you folks. And if you want to kind of run through your project with us.
Sure, we'd like to share our screen. We have a slideshow that we've prepared, if that's okay.
I'm okay with it. I don't know how to
Oh, yeah.
share the. Okay.
Thank you for taking the time to review our sketch plan review application over the last 3 weeks. We've worked very hard to get to this point in the process and hope you're as excited as we are to continue with this opportunity for South Berwick. My name is Sam Klingstrom,
My name is Roxanne Poulin.
and we are here on behalf of Caponera LLC, which is the owner of 406 Main Street.
So Sam and I grew up in South Berwick. We're graduates of Marshwood. After living all over the country for the last decade or so, we found ourselves back here at the beginning of the pandemic to raise our newborn, who's now 2. In our quest for finding a home, we found the old Rio's Barber Shop was for sale. So we decided that we wanted to procure that space. We had a few family members that had gone there when we were kids, so we were familiar with the spot. We saw it as an opportunity to build something that would keep us here, essentially.
After buying the property, we demolished the existing mobile home that was in the lower area of the property. And we remediated that landscape, giving us a nice vacant lot that allowed us to visualize what we could really do with this space, especially considering some of the constraints we have, which we'll mention later.
After almost a year of brainstorming about what we sort of wanted to build there or utilize the space for, talking to family members, talking to friends, doing some market research, we ultimately decided that we think South Berwick needs a space for the community, something that's family friendly, something that's open air, something that's casual, a place for people to gather. So what we came up with was a
Beer and wine garden. So we know you're familiar with our site plan application, members of the planning board, but we want to take this opportunity to provide a little more personality to our application and detail the various items that are laid out in the section of the ordinance related to this presentation.
So on the next few slides, excuse me, you will see an overview of the natural environment as well as the built environment surrounding the site. On the first, as we subsequently continue the slideshow, the first slide will show you the approach from downtown. The second slide will show you the approach from Rollinsford, and the third one will show you a pedestrian approach.
So here's a couple of pictures. These were actually taken today, so they're as recent as you can get, of the approach to 406 Main Street from downtown. You'll see the building really melds into the environment there. It's actually much smaller than the surrounding buildings. And you also notice the ample parking on both sides of the street there. Here's the approach with a little more visual of the building itself from Rollinsford. That's the existing structure, which was Rio's Barber Shop. We have done some re-siding of it. We removed the old vinyl and put board and batten up. Also, there is a movable storage we have located there at the moment, which is the only new structure, if you will, that is proposed here on our plan. Right now, we're using it to house materials. And this is a picture from across the road on the Driscoll Brook overpass. You'll see Driscoll Brook right here, which borders the property. And then you'll see that the lower area, those are actually wood chips that are on the ground. So it's very, very quaint, very low key, nothing, major in terms of actual developments. And we think it's exactly what we need.
Okay, what you'll see here is a picture of the proposed lower seating area. To the right of the picnic tables is Driscoll Brook. And as you can see, the natural buffers and existing screening from the large maple trees. Main Street is located parallel and behind the shipping container. So when you're in the back part of the property, that is the view.
So as I mentioned earlier, there are some constraints on the property, and that was one of the things that we spent a decent portion of the year figuring out how to deal with, and how can we actually make a return on this property, considering the fact that there's a public sewer line that runs through that lower area, and the fact that we're in the shoreline and slope zone, and the 1% flood hazard, from the brook there. It's quite constrained as opposed with respect to what we can actually build, and that's when we decided, well, let's make it outdoor, let's make it community based, let's put something there that's enjoyable for everyone, and also something like Roxanne said that we would seek out when we were traveling across the country in our last 10 years, really. Along with those two constraints of the sewer and shoreline and slope, we also have a lack of area space for parking. So as you know from our application, we are requesting a variance to the off-street parking requirements. Yeah, the guardrail easement's not as major, but there is a guardrail easement related to the guardrail for the Driscoll Brook culvert.
Doesn't quite affect much. Yeah. Okay, on this slide, we'll cut off, that's right. You'll see that our proposal is in line with the recent comprehensive plan for South Berwick in a number of different ways. Rebuilding of commercial districts. These are direct quotes from the comprehensive plan as well. Encouraging downtown to be a central gathering place for the community. Fostering pedestrian and bike-friendly village. They use village. improve appearance and the vitality of downtown, and I'd like to specifically note Lower Main Street, I think it needs a little bit more of a heartbeat as well. And a local ownership, us being locals, it gives a sense of commitment to the community of this town, so. Oh, neat. This is also a snippet from the comprehensive plan, sort of detailing what is defined as downtown. The point is when you take the left turn down to Lower Main Street, and as you can see, the bar yard.
Yeah, you
is
can't,
located right
I don't
there.
know if it's cut off for people on Zoom, but behind that, the arrow is pointing to the parcel that we are developing.
It's called the point. That's so
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So in addition to the comprehensive plan, there's also, of course, the criteria and standards laid out in chapter 140, which is the zoning chapter of the ordinance. And we believe that this project, it meets all the applicable ones, and we've requested waivers in our application for ones that we don't believe are actually applicable. However, the applicable ones such as safe and adequate access to the site, screening and preservation of the landscape. As I said, we're not actually installing or developing the land with any structures. We're actually maintaining it outdoor space for use. Relationship to the environment, again, similar to preservation of the landscape. And as I mentioned earlier, it's a small development compared to the surrounding buildings. Lighting, if you're able to look at our sketch plan, you'll note on one of the plans, we detail the lighting we propose to provide. It's going to be low bistro style lighting over the area, soft white. There's some notes on there related to flood lighting. That's more for emergencies. It won't be typically on.
The signage is also noted in our application. We propose to hang a sign sort of on the existing sign for the old Rio's Barber Shop, kind of off the front of the building. We plan to commission local artists to design something for the outside of the shipping container on both sides, which will not have any sort of wording. You can kind of tell by our logo and by like the style of our presentation, it's going to be fine line, maybe a little floral.
The site's obviously on all public utilities, which is one of the criteria that is notable. And for noise, we aren't proposing to be open during any hours after 10 o'clock, which is when quiet hours begin. So again, yeah, thank you for the opportunity to present this, our proposal to you. We hope you found it informative, easy to understand, and complete. And we look forward to your comments and discussing any information you may require in order to be able to consider our application complete based on the requirements of the ordinances. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sam and Roxanne. Appreciate you taking the time to come talk with us about this. Are there any point from the board? Bill or Zach, I'll start with either of you. Is there anything, any comments, questions, or concerns that you have?
I have two quick ones. It cut out a little bit on for me as to when the hours of operation would be until. Was that 9 o'clock?
Yeah, hang on, Zach. I'm gonna hold that thought. We're just silencing something. Thank you, sir. Zach, can you restate what you were saying, please?
I cut out a bit for me. With the hours of operation until 9 o'clock p.m.
So in our application, we stated the establishment will be open to the public daily from 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. And we more want those hours as possibilities. We'll most likely be open 7 days a week. However, we don't want to limit our ability to be open 7 days a week.
One other small question is there a, and I don't, what's the capacity we're planning for? Or is that too preliminary at this point?
Application states a capacity of approximately 60 seats. That includes 8 bar seats inside and the remainder outdoor seating.
Okay, thanks.
I can clarify a little farther because there is some complexities to that. We would like to reserve 60 on our planning board application as a possibility. However, due to the constraints of the building and the space available for public restrooms, we'll most likely be finishing out with 49 or less to keep us within the requirement of 2 bathrooms.
Okay. That's all I had. Thanks.
I guess I'll go next. The question that I had was going to be about the facilities, with it having been a barber shop, but he literally just answered that question, so.
Well, so on your application, there are some items of concern. Your proposal lies within the shoreland zone, and those ordinances, the shoreline slope, tend to get very complicated. And it's not a judgment on your actual proposal. The issue is those particular ordinances that we have to follow that guide us along with all of your requested waivers. I'm hesitant to ask for any approval tonight on the
Okay.
sketch plan. I think it's a very complicated project that really is going to need a higher level of review in conformance with all of our ordinances, the shoreline slope, and to make sure that your application is going to meet all of those requirements. Those are some of my concerns. So I'm not in a position to ask for approval, but before I, make a statement, I'll ask if there's any further conversation from any board members of.
And
May I-
Yeah, I have a response to that as well.
Yeah, may I make a statement related to attachment D of our application, and I want to make sure this is related to your comment. Attachment D, item 6, special flood hazard area zoning. A portion of the parcel is located within the 100-year floodplain according to data available from the state of Maine and reproduced on, this is a misreference, I apologize, it says sheet CE101. It should actually read plan. Plan 3. No development as defined by Saltburg Ordinance 77-2 will occur within the bounds of the floodplain. Therefore, special permits as otherwise required by 77-3 shall not be required for these improvements.
We'd also like to note that there was an existing structure on the lot when we purchased it. There was a 1950s trailer that was sitting really close to the brook. So we demolished that and sort of remediated the landscape in order to make it more sustainable.
And more conforming to the ordinances.
We removed the structure that was not in compliance with the ordinances.
Okay. I agree.
Is this time to address the note that we got this afternoon concerning plan recommendations as far as third party?
Yes, I think that's where we're going with this one, and that is because of the overall complicated nature of the waiver request, that this advanced for third-party review outside of the town, and that vote would encompass having the town planner speak so the others can hear, having the town planner find several engineering companies that can review in a timely fashion and get us some results on the conformance with all of our ordinances for the shoreland zone and other items pertaining to chapter 140.
Just to be clear, we're not building anything. What's still there is, what is there was there. We're not proposing any
Yeah,
new
we put wood
structures.
chips down over existing fill.
So we're
I
not
can't
asking to
speak to
build
what
something.
I can't speak to what was there. I honestly don't know what was there.
Sure,
Yeah, there's
I
no
can
but
only-
we're not
yeah,
asking to build
that's fine.
anything.
Yeah,
It's not necessarily just about building posts. It's about the allowed uses within the district, within the shoreland, the overlays. And so my point is, you're asking for a lot of waivers, whether or not you think they're needed or they're not applicable. In my view, I think those are items that a third party needs to look at and review for us to give us that real line and a report on your compliance and your application's compliance with those particular ordinances. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. And I see, Bill, you have your hand up too, if you'd like to.
Yep. So just going back to one of the other waivers, if I may, one of them was regarding the parking. I was just wondering if in the application on site, is there no parking, or is it just there's not enough to accommodate the 49 people that would potentially be there and it would spill over to the public's parking on the street?
there is enough for,
One,
we're plan to provide a single ADA spot, which will be closest to the building. And then there are 2 spots of shorter length that would be provided abutting the storage container. So
Okay.
there's
3 total.
3 total of off-street. In addition, we're providing a bike rack. And we think that, you know, the nature of the area is such that creating parking space in the downtown isn't necessarily, you know, in line with how the neighborhood should be developed. So that's where we sort of have
We determined that
confidence in that request.
few of the, or most of all of the commercial parking lots in South Berwick are within 1/2 mile.
Yeah.
1/2 mile from from the property. So in the comprehensive plan, it actually states that villages are walking spaces, and South Berwick would like to encourage members of the public to park, walk, look up, come up with new business ideas, your neighbor. So yeah, you can park at the town hall, the parking lot in front of the community center,
USPS,
the USPS, oh yeah, the USPS parking.
I believe the
parking lot.
library is
Yeah.
public.
Obviously, we don't have any, I mean, you did see the picture that we took today. Just another addendum is that there's always parking in Lower Main Street. We walked around there during the Strawberry Festival and noticed that the busiest day of the year in South Berwick, there's still ample parking on Lower Main Street. So we don't seem to think that parking will be an issue.
Fair enough. It is still something that you're gonna be requesting a waiver on.
Sure, sure,
yeah.
We
Yeah,
need
yeah,
to
yeah.
work our
Of
way
course.
through that.
Yeah.
And hence the purpose of sending it out for
Yeah.
a third-party review.
And I think, you know, we're not
Yeah.
opposed to third-party review.
No.
In our, we just want to make sure, and I think we have valid reason to have concern that any third-party review is done within the guidelines of the ordinances and that it's done in a professional manner.
That would be the
And-
purpose of the third-party review,
Yeah.
folks, you know, is
Sure.
to get that unadulterated review of your application in conformance with our audits or what it is you're looking to do, where your various waiver requests fit in there. I see you also had a variance request. We can't grant variances. And so those are all items that will be further fleshed out in that process. And will actually provide us some further guidance, you know, as we move forward. So, you know, my recommendation would be to push this to a third-party review and ask that Tammy reach out to, you know, 3 engineering companies capable of this. And let's get one that can have some quick turnaround, so that we're not sitting on this forever. Because I did drive by, I saw you working out there the other day. So let's do that. That would be, you know, my proposal. But again, I'm only one board member here, and, you know, so would there be a motion to send this out for third-party review, subject to 140-77?
So moved.
It's been moved. Is there a second on that item?
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any further discussions from the board members? And I'll just go up to Zoom real quick. Let's see. Seeing nothing on Zoom, go ahead, Berto.
Yeah, talk about 3 firms, is that just for quotes or what?
Quotes in time.
Yeah, whoever can get to it the quickest really is, you know, we don't need to sit here and wait around for months and months and months to get an answer. And that individual, then that report will tell us what we can and what we can't do and where this fits in and where it doesn't fit in and what waivers may need to be granted and where they shouldn't be granted and the variance that we can't grant anyway. So that'll be an item that we'll have to have further. review.
Okay.
So it's been properly moved and seconded. Any further discussion? We're going to roll call this because again, members on Zoom, going to start with Zoom. Bill?
Aye.
Okay, Zach?
Aye.
And Greg is an aye, and so that motion passes and you know what to do.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much for your
Thank you.
presentation.
So we'll maintain contact with Tammy related to that.
Yep, and what will happen is it will go out for third-party review. She'll be in contact with you on that.
Okay.
And when that is done,
Yeah.
it'll come back to the planning board, and at that point, we'll probably start the sketch plan review,
Okay.
because it's not being approved tonight.
No, absolutely.
Yep,
Yeah, yeah, that's
so-
fine.
Yep.
And then I do have one more question for the variance. That, I guess it may be a definition thing. So if it's a waiver of the off-street parking requirement, is that something that you would grant? Or It may just be.
Yeah, it could be
issue
all
of-
semantics. Honestly, Sam, I'd have to go back and look at specifically what you're asking to see where that fits in conformance.
Okay,
So I can't answer that question tonight.
okay, that's
So
fine.
we're gonna look at the original application, and that will be sent to the third. All right,
Thank
thank
you
you.
so much.
Yep, thank you.
Can I come back? She doesn't like sitting next to me.
I suppose Hershey. All right, we're gonna be moving on to old business, and the next item up is a review of MSP 22006 Great Hill Road, proposed subdivision out there. Now, I'm not seeing anybody here from,
He
oh,
is here.
yes, okay, I recognize, okay, yes. So, yeah, gentlemen, come on up, have a seat up front or pull them over, whatever you want to do. So as a reminder to the board members, a meeting or two ago, I can't quite remember, we approved this, we approved the initial sketch plan review. We authorized them to move forward with a cluster subdivision, which makes sense where they're proposing this. And so, again, they're here for preliminary review. We had a series of comments, questions, maybe a few concerns. You can hopefully address some of those tonight, maybe not, we'll see. So, gentlemen, the floor is yours as we look to go on in this preliminary review.
All right, good evening, Greg, the rest of the planning board. My name is Eric Salovich, Wind Northam Survey. Met most of you before. Here with me tonight is Rob with Waterstone Engineering. Jeff and Jessica Lee, the owners of the property, were not able to attend tonight due to a scheduling conflict. Hockey season for kids. So here we are. I had the pleasure to meet with Tammy, her office, yesterday afternoon to discuss some of the questions that she had to kind of give us an opportunity to expedite things here at tonight's meeting. I had some back and forth with Tammy today, and I was just wondering, was the board able to receive some of the documents that we sent over?
Yes,
Okay, great.
it's in their package.
Yep.
They've got before them now.
Does anybody else need a copy of the plan or the set? No, Pat?
Yeah.
Here is a copy of the subdivision plan for you.
We did. Yeah, no, we did.
And I would normally bring my board and my large plan, like I did during sketch review. But at a recent planning board hearing, when I brought that in, I was referred to as a boomer. So I'm trying to move away from coming with the board. So I don't know if there's a copy of the plan that you guys have on PDF that we can share in Zoom. I don't have one to post for the public here at the meeting.
This is fine, keep going.
Okay, so I'm going to not put the board to sleep again. During our sketch plan review, I had a pretty detailed presentation that walked through the existing conditions plan, as well as both like well, not the conventional as much, but cluster subdivision plan. I outlined a lot of the Thank you for that. I walked the board through a lot of the lines on the plan, as far as the shoreline protection zone, the existing flood hazard zone, and the yet to be approved flood hazard zone, the preliminary, some of the soils on site, location for test pits, 4K areas, house areas, proposed well areas, and that sort of thing. So I will not be reviewing that, but if we have questions specifically related to that stuff, I have no problem diving back into that. So yeah, when I met with Tammy, some of the concerns were relatively minor. I'm aware that the water issue with the well is going to come up, and I will let the board kind of lead that discussion and then react to that and some of the concerns that we have in reading the letter provided by Tammy from the the state. So we can cross that bridge here in a minute. Moving through some of the other requirements. I'm not sure if the board needs to vote on whether the financial and technical capacity letter provided by Louise is something that is acceptable or not.
I can respond to that one. A copy of the financial letter came over, but because it included account numbers, I did not provide it to the board. It is, no, it has routing account.
I did not notice that. I wouldn't have
Yes.
said that.
So hence, I have that document if the board would like to take and review it, but I did not want to put it out as a public document for everyone to be able to review.
that makes sense.
Thank you, Tammy.
In my estimation, the applicant, the financial capability in which to make this subdivision happen.
Moving on from that, thank you for that, Tammy. I'm sure Louise appreciate that. I received the letter and just forwarded
Yep.
on.
And that's fine. That's what they asked you to do, and that's what I had requested you to do, so.
On top of that, there were a series of, mostly minor typos on the site plan within the notes. Things that we would need to change before final. I can go over those if the board is concerned with hearing that. I'd love to hear myself speak. I can see Greg shaking his head. But most of them would be removing some notes in our plan set here. We say that we would provide as-built of the road. Nowhere in the ordinance is that for a private road required. So we would be scratching that. If these as-built surveys are required at some point in time, then we can certainly reintroduce that or discuss that. As far as that concern, that kind of moves down to some other missing things, included a narrative on the project. I provided that to Tammy and that the board should have that. It's a pretty straightforward project. I think we discussed how the Great Works Land Trust would be requiring approximately 6 acres down along the river, which would encumber the entire 250-foot shoreline protection zone, basically removing that from our developable area, and among some other things. We are being asked to show density math on the final plan. That basically, from my understanding, would prove that we're okay to do a cluster subdivision. It's a 20-acre parcel. We're proposing 5 lots. I have no issues doing that. The density math and providing that on the final plan, we're not going to have any issues meeting the sizes of these lots. Moving on from there, it was requested to draft some HOA documents for the private road. I did provide that today to Tammy. It should be within your packets. That is a cookie cutter private road document. There has been no work to make that specific to this project. But that is drafted per state of Maine law, so that the document that would be provided, part of the deeds and the sales of these properties, that would be included. So with that, I'll turn it over for questions to the board, and we can start discussing some of these other things.
Okay, so why don't we start, and we'll start with Zoom, Bill or Zach. Do either of you have any questions or clarifications that are needed?
I don't have anything at the moment.
Thank you. Okay. Anybody here in this room, Hershey or Burnell, have anything on this as we work our way through?
No, I mean, I think they've anticipated a lot of great questions.
Yeah.
So I'm really curious about how the wetlands
Yep,
and septic
that's-
systems are gonna work out together. I'd even like to see, it'd be great to get a separate plan, so it's a little clearer. And my main concern is, wetlands, and as usual, it sounds like Maine DEP has already pretty much told you what to do. And have you talked to Inland Fish and Wildlife?
Yeah, so we have applied for a main permit by rule for stormwater management. Let's see, what are the various pieces of that? So there's the permit by rule for stormwater management. There is the Army Corps wetlands permit that is underway. And then the inland fishing well. There were three species identified in the inland fish and wildlife. And that review has come back and it has been cleared.
I think we saw that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I read that.
Okay.
Yeah.
The inland fish and wildlife, I think we had done that sketch plan, but the permit by rule and the wetlands permit, we were waiting kind of for to get past the sketch plan status. So that's all been submitted and that's underway. And it's possible, at this point, it's still a little bit up in the air. It's possible that we're not actually even going to need the Corps of Engineers wetland permit. In that the crossing as designed right now is actually designed with the intention of spanning the jurisdictional element such that it would obviate the need for an actual wetlands permit. So we're still working that detail out. But I think that's the way it's going.
Yeah, so go ahead. Sorry.
Philip, one thought, how far have you gotten with the Great Works Regional Land Trust? in your discussion?
Leave that to you.
So we had a great first meeting. We discussed the project, we discussed the piece itself and access and some other things that could be brought forward to the land trust. Unfortunately, Jeff and Jess were unable to attend the call. Jeff phoned in for a moment. I believe he was still on a job site or out and about. So I think specifics regarding the actual transfer have not been discussed. But the land trust, and I'm not going to put words in their mouth, but Pat Robinson is here tonight, is interested in the piece. We both agree that it'll be a good fit for the community. And the last we left off is the land trust was going to meet privately to discuss it. And then they were going to have a follow-up meeting, which may be happening sometime soon, with the Lees to discuss the next steps. But we wanted to get through this phase.
And I'm just gonna say one thing, because, it's a small town. My partner is the chair of the Great Works Regional Land Trust. I just want you to know that, but it will not influence anything about my duties as a planning board member. I'm not gonna recuse myself in this one. So I'm just gonna say that. Sure.
That's fine, as long as. I'm just teasing. Sorry, I'm so straightforward.
Are there any other, I do have a few comments from the planning board that Pat, I'll work to you after. Bernal, do you have anything?
Came up with the letter today, and it raised a question in my mind here. The first paragraph is the proposing private water and stuff. What's the source? Such for that.
For the, one more time?
Yeah, so that's
The
probably
private
gonna.
water, it says here, the developer is proposing private water. So I was wondering what the source for that is.
So originally, during our discussion, we were proposing private wells on the 5 lots. And as the project sits today, we are proposing 5 private wells. I'm gonna turn this over to Rob for some more discussion. As far as I'm understanding, the subdivision that happened across the street more recently, I believe it was last year that project went through, did bring down public water to satisfy the needs of the planning board and some other issues that we're kind of working through now. I had some questions on the size of that water line on that they brought down the main road. I haven't gotten a straight answer. Maybe I just need to make a phone call over to DPW to get that, and I don't mind doing that, moving forward later.
Yeah, if you reach out to Rob Leach, right at the water district, he'll be able to answer all those questions for you.
But go ahead, Bernal.
Yeah.
Sorry, John.
And I can answer some of those questions for you if you'd like. And if you want to keep going.
Out of curiosity here, as far as the wells go, how far away are you from the restricted area of wells out in that area?
Right, so the DEP issued this, and it's somewhere in my, but in 2019, they did an assessment of it, and this is one of the parcels that's identified as as an area of concern. So essentially all the parcels off Great Hill Road, Black Swan Road, Hooper Sands Road. And public water has been run on 2 of those roads, and now evidently as far down as the most recent subdivision. DEP recommended that essentially one of 2 things happen. They recommend that that we use public water and or routine testing. And so the development across the road has is closer to the source, the contaminant source areas. They're all up and down Hooper Sands Road, so it's not limited to one spot. But there are 2 wells at 14 and 24 Great Hill Road that have both tested negative for VOCs, which is the contaminant of concern, and those are immediately uphill. So yeah, they're the ones on the same side as the Lee parcel.
Immediately adjacent to.
And immediately adjacent to. So I think what I'm not sure if I have an opinion as to the best way to approach this at this point, meaning that there is, I think we still need some more information. So the obvious information would be, what would I would assume that the water line that's been run for the new subdivision envisioned future usage also. It would be crazy if it didn't. You know, that they would have only run, it wouldn't have made sense. They would have only have run pipe large enough to service that. I'd be shocked if they did, but they did. So assuming that it was sufficient, that the question would then be, you know, what would it entail to run to this? And cost and all that. It's a really big financial burden on a small scale developer, to be honest. I mean, you know, the way that these lots would have been sold would have been essentially the road would have been put in, then the lots would be sold, and then the individual lot development would be upon the parcel owner, right? So that's a very different financial commitment than is running 1,000 feet of public water. So what we would probably want to do is we would need to look at the financials of that, as well as consider testing or installation of a well for one of these properties and testing for that. And then it's not prohibited by the DEP letter. The DEP letter just recommends public water and or testing. And the example of that is that those 2 lots are not on public water. They're just, their wells are continue to be tested. So that's probably a good point to pause and see if you have any points of clarification or.
No testing has been done so far though.
No, there's no wells on this property. Just the 2 lots immediately upstream of it.
Jeff did mention that he would be willing to install a monitoring well and to test the groundwater. If
Prior
that
to
was-
construction?
By my understanding, yes. If that was something, if this ends up being a deal breaker with the board, I did have conversations with him regarding that. But again, I just want to reiterate that 14 and 24 Great Hill Road are shown on our survey. They are immediate abutters to our lot, and they have both tested for 0 VOCs within the letter that was provided by Tammy.
So,
Mr. Chair,
yeah, sure, Tammy.
the letter that was provided was dated 2021. It is now almost 2023. In hopes that the main DEP report that you received noted that it would take decades for the aquifer to become clear of the VOCs. Whether or not, since they were found in 91 through 93, they've been able to be cleared, I would really caution the applicant, even if they do a test well, because of that aquifer that sits under there with the stone covering it to filter it, that potentially 2 wells may be needed on opposite parts so they can get the clear line as the aquifer goes through and as the VOCs leave to go into the river, because they will be abutting the river. That's
So-
where it's gonna come through.
Thank you. So I have a couple of questions. And they're really in no particular order. Kind of starting at the top level, much wetlands is left, what I'll call the shoreland zone, now that you're gonna be deeding over,
Lots.
what's that?
Lots of wetlands. Essentially, for the Army Corps permit, there's actually zero wetland impact, zero.
Okay.
So there is some work in the wetland buffer.
Yeah.
But one of the requests of at the sketch plan was the addition of landscape buffers
Yeah,
and
the
all of that.
buffers, yeah.
So those have all been added. There's 50-foot no cut buffers on all parcel lines.
I guess, before you
Sure, yeah,
continue,
please.
so I get that, my bigger question is, we're not really getting into the shoreland zone because we're far enough.
We are
away with
not in the
deeding of
shoreline.
that. Okay,
There's no
okay, so-
shoreline zone
Okay,
operating.
so really all you're dealing with now is the wetlands, you can stay your distance away and have your buffer, okay.
Yeah.
We were actually having minimal wetland buffer
Yep.
impacts
Yep.
with the layout. And per the outcome of the
Yep.
first meeting with Tammy, we've since moved some of the proposed well locations with inside that wetland buffer setback.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that we're all on the same page. or
Yeah,
that the-
yeah,
right, so,
absolutely,
Okay, so
yeah.
that's good. What was the plan for these lots? Was it, and I think you started to answer that, was it
Right.
to kind of develop it and then market them to the general public?
I think that's right. Yeah.
Okay.
So it'll be, a 22-foot gravel road, or I don't remember exactly, but approximately 20 some foot gravel road that where the initial clearing would just be extended for the road only.
Yeah.
And we have approximate locations of each of the driveways. And then they would be allowed to clear for the driveway, but then they have to work within that envelope. So in terms of the developer costs, it's really just road
Okay.
and the wells for the monitoring.
Okay, so fair enough. So the next question is gonna be, what are we gonna do with the road? You're gonna be asking for the town to take it over?
No,
Okay.
Private road.
So it's gonna be a private road and that's gonna have to be then codified within the deed.
yeah,
And
That
all
follows
other
those,
stuff.
those HOA documents for the
Yeah.
private road.
Okay.
So each owner would have 20%.
So for me, as I sit here and think about it, if we're gonna say, okay, should we say, yes, okay, go ahead and do this? For me, right now, the sticking point is the public water issue or the water. You are in that identified zone.
Yep.
Understand that those other wells are causing an issue. Or not causing an issue. My concern is with your statement of we're gonna do this, and these are my words, not necessarily yours, but something along the line you just stated. We want to get it in there and then the individuals can worry about the water. That concerns me from if you're putting the road in, can we ask those individuals to, oh, okay, now you want to have water, you can pay for the
right.
500 or 600 feet of water line to go in and then all the associated hookups.
Yeah,
As opposed to, should that be the responsibility of the developer initially? Or should you be drilling actual test wells now in each, where those planned wells are?
Yeah.
And full disclosure for the people that are gonna be coming in. The town council had conversation about this when this letter came out a little over a year ago. A couple of years ago now. Well, it came out in 2021, but I think the town council had some conversation with it sometime early summer of last year. And one of the things they had talked about is how do we, get this word out about, possible contamination of people coming in, because what happened out there is someone moved in or something happened, they drilled a well and then had all this contaminated thing, the well water, and then it became, well, how come we didn't know? So there was some conversation
Yeah.
back then about, did the town want to figure out, or could they, or would they? I don't really know. Didn't go anywhere about putting it on the deeds.
yeah,
So I would be
Yeah.
hesitant, frankly, to say, all right, here's your, go buy your lot, they'll probably sell, right, and sell for it. Then, I don't think that's a question, but then you find out after you buy it that you may have contaminated water, now what do you do?
right.
And so for me, I don't necessarily need an answer tonight, but as we go through the preliminary process, we're doing that now, but as it gets to the final process, I think there's gonna need a lot more discussion on what we're gonna do with the
Right,
water.
right.
And I think there needs to be some resolution there. I think before I would feel comfortable signing off or voting. Other than that, guys, I mean, you're pretty thorough in your application, what you've given us thus far. And, you got the buffers, I think You know, the bigger issue is gonna be, I think Hershey probably looking at some of the septic stuff in relation to the wetlands. And
Yeah.
then, you know, you talked about the drainage and how that's gonna work. You know. And then we want to see the covenants that are gonna be in the deeds, that kind of stuff. We want to see that. But it really is gonna be the water issue, guys, and I would encourage you to talk.
You got that?
I would encourage you to talk more to the landowner
Right.
about how you want to approach that.
So I appreciate you raising the, you know, the point of clarification on how that responsibility would lie, because I think what I didn't intend to give the impression that it would be left up to the homeowners. I think what I meant to say was that the situation would be adequately assessed prior to the sale. So all I meant by that was if there were two monitoring wells that were put in and it could be assessed to the satisfaction of the board that it's clean, then the decision could be made that it would be that the future well development would just be left to each of the parcels as it would be had there not been any contamination. So there's that one answer, but then the other one is what you're saying about the knowledge to the buyer and ways that I've seen that done. It's kind of similar to, say, like lead paint in an older home. It's in a seller's disclosure, so it can be the actual DEP document can be attached to either the homeowners. So the homeowners covenants, which is one way of doing it. Another way is to reference it in the deed. There's a variety of ways of doing that, because there's no question that there's a potential future risk, as Tammy had said, that it could test clean now, but groundwater is very, very complicated and it could test never. And the sources have been removed and there's cleanup operations. It's potentially going in another direction. I mean, we really don't know.
Yeah, I think the letter actually stated something to the effect of it's reached bedrock, and so there is no further type of mitigation measures that they can do.
Yeah, that's right.
So it's there, it's not going anywhere now in perpetuity. Because it
Right.
just can't leach out anywhere else.
Yeah,
So
and that
that
the sources have all been removed,
correct,
but it is, the
done.
contamination is in there. Yeah, there's no question about that. Yeah, and that would be a full seller's disclosure thing that would be required. Sorry, Jennifer.
I'm waiting for your.
Jen, go right ahead.
I just have a couple questions on the plan. So when you're done talking about the water, if we could just circle back to that.
Happy to, yeah. Does anybody have any, you've answered my questions. I think, again, I would encourage you to have further conversations, because I'd hate to be the planning board on the other end when it's approved. And so, Jen, I have a question for you.
Sure.
If the subdivision's approved, it's just a simple CEO permit at that point, right? To build a house, that's not gonna be coming back to us.
It's not going to be coming back to you necessarily,
Yeah.
unless there's a problem with the plan or a problem with the land going forward.
Yeah,
There are a couple things on this plan
Yeah.
that don't make sense.
yeah.
So we could just, if I could just like talk, talk about it real quick, and then maybe they have answers and maybe they don't. And they
You know
can
what,
find
go
them.
ahead, that's fine.
Are you sure?
Go right ahead, that's fine, yeah.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Okay. I know Tammy's gonna bring this up, but I'm gonna. Okay,
She likes the color.
no, I need to see it color so I can make sense of it. I'm a visual person.
Sure.
So, on the private right of way, there's no hammerhead at the end and there's no cul-de-sac. So that becomes life safety. So is that gonna be changed or,
There is a hammerhead. As far as I'm concerned.
okay, this is what you're calling hammerhead? Okay, how big is it?
L4 is feet, I believe.
Do I have it somewhere?
It
That
should
it,
be on your S2 cluster subdivision plan.
It's on the line table up on the top left, that gives you the distances along
is
that.
this the right document for that?
It's right on this cluster subdivision
It's
plan,
this one.
up at the top
Oh,
left.
okay, I see what you're saying, up here.
So L4 is
Yeah.
just under 100 feet. There'd be ample room to pull in back up into the road. Yeah, right away, kind of elbows.
Where am I looking?
Look top left over by the north arrow.
One side.
So that gives you the
Okay, thank
distances
you.
at L1, L2, L3, L4,
Okay,
L5.
I see it.
It gets a little tight when you have all those bearings and distances all on the plan in that small area. So it is a full 50-foot wide right of way. And that hammerhead is 100 feet long. So a fire truck would be able to spin around.
I would be interested in sending that out to our fire chief and having him just review that.
Sure.
If that's okay with you.
If we have to, we can expand that to do a left-right. There's room on here.
It is so,
Yeah, don't worry about it. What we've done with plans in the past is, one comes to mind right over here is we asked the fire chief to come out or the fire chief to say, hey,
take a look.
I'll be able to go in, I'll take a look, and I could say, you don't need to do that, or can you just do that? My preference would be, if that's an issue, let's get a hold of the fire chief and let's just chat with the fire chief. And that problem can be resolved really quickly with a phone call or a review of the plan and
Thank
some
you.
guidance from the chief.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so the board knows and the applicants know, it's up to my department to take and
Yep.
notify the fire chief,
Yep.
director of public works, water and sewer. So those people will be notified after this meeting when I know if you want any changes to the plans. So that when I send out the information, they get the most accurate set of plans to be reviewing. I have had the opportunity today to talk with the director of public works. He would like to see a few changes on the plan. I have what he wants changed. I don't have them written down so they can read them yet. My hand scratching is not legible. So I can call Eric next week, meet with Eric or Rob, whichever one wants to come in and meet with me, or I can meet with them with his suggestions.
Did you see them and could you recall were they major or minor? Hopefully.
For the hammerhead,
Yeah.
he was hoping to put an oval in because that would solve both. Should it ever come to the town, it would solve the plowing issue. It would also solve the water drainage issue around the hammerhead and in that area because there's a foot drop off between the road and that. It would also help with the development, the drainage, life safety, because the fire trucks can get around an oval cul-de-sac as opposed to a round one, much easier.
Yeah, it's not just about the fire trucks getting in, it's all just about the, the landowners getting out
Right.
at the same
So
time.
it's that he had a couple of comments on the layout of the culvert. He thought it might need to be tweaked just a little bit because where the brook was coming down, and I know it was a dry year this year, but he thought if we could tweak it just a hair going in one direction, and I wrote it down, so
Okay.
we can
great.
look at the picture and do that. He had also mentioned the entryway. You'll need to definitely do the application, the highway entrance application for him. And once that is done, he could then take and make sure that what is on the plan will actually work. He does not believe it will be an issue, but because there are going to be people in there, he wants to make sure that it is going to be 100% because of the subdivision also across the street. You don't want everybody kind of driving into everybody as they're coming and
Yeah,
going.
I can't picture it off the top of my head. Are there gonna be any site distance issues pulling out?
No, when I asked Jay Redemacher, the
Yeah.
Director of Public Works, that question, he said, no, it's a nice area.
Yeah,
He
okay.
doesn't believe it will be.
No,
Yeah,
it's
it's
a
but-
straight section.
Okay.
It's a straight section.
But yeah, he wanted to see it to make sure and to know how the highway entrance permit would actually be written so that he could see where it was going. And he also mentioned that once the third house goes in, the road has to be paved by town statute. So I had mentioned that to you. I have verified it. So I
Even for
don't
private
know.
roads, they can't be gravel?
Yeah, after the third house.
Not in this town.
Yeah, Jay said it was. Yeah. Yeah.
Look at the ordinance.
Yeah, I don't remember seeing that.
Well, that meant, I don't know if it's in one of the ones that we were looking at, or if it's one that Jay had, but he said that was the one reason why he didn't have any additional houses on his road, is because they didn't want more than 3, so they'd have.
It's up to
That's a
you.
private
So,
road, huh?
check the ordinance, because we just went over this morning with a different, situation, and it's considerably more than 3.
What do you mean
my-
considerably more
permanent or?
Well, so when we pulled the ordinance this
Yeah.
morning to talk to another
Yep.
group of individuals, it was 8.
So we keep it around.
Yep, it was changed. So we can pull that and look into that further, and we'll get back to you on that. My other concern is well placement on your plan. So if you look under proposed lot 1, I know you're probably not married to where these houses are going, but that well sits right on that house. So if you look on where you have the driveway coming in and you look at that well, I'm not sure it's perfect. So I don't know if, because of where it's wetland, so you're the expert, I'm just not, but where the wetland sits there, I'm not sure if that's like where the house has to sit because of septic well setbacks, whatever. But that well is like on the house line.
Yeah, these are mostly placed for graphical purposes to prove that, hey, we can get a well with setback in Port area, get a modest size home.
Yeah.
That well can move around. You would,
Not that
as you
much.
move it away from the house, it does start having the well radius within the public right of way, which I don't believe is that,
Yeah.
they just answer that. So we can slide that, or we can put the house in front of it.
Yeah.
And still stay within 50 feet back, and that well can slide back some, so if the well comes back and the house comes forward, now the well's in the backyard,
It's not even a big issue as long as the house can be moved from where it is right now.
it can.
Then that's totally fine. That was my other question. And then,
And that may end up changing when the lot is sold and it's being developed by somebody, we're not stitching the house down to where they want it.
correct. Yep. Thank you. That's all I have for you. I'm sorry.
No, thank you.
I have a quick question. This little corner dogleg here is being conveyed to you as part of the property development?
No, that's being conveyed to map 13 lot 53A, Seth A. Gagner, who is in a butter.
Ah, they are buying it. Oh, I'm sorry, it says, I'm sorry, it says it right there, sorry.
No, it's okay.
Okay,
As I don't know if that conveyance has gone through yet. They were in talks and conversations. I haven't seen a deed, so that's why I'm keeping it to be conveyed, but they have.
can I ask a sort of stupid question? Is it just because there's a buffer then and you didn't need it? I mean, it seems like it's almost all wetlands.
It is majority wetlands. Seth approached the Lees, interested in buying some property to create a natural buffer.
Okay.
So the property, that area of land is relatively wet. It's fairly useless. It's very thick, but will make a nice vegetative buffer.
And then he gets to own the mosquitoes himself.
Exactly.
Okay, thanks. Thank you.
Do any of the planning board members have any additional questions looking up to Zoom at this point?
I guess I would just say, comment, I would agree that the water availability seems like, one of the main issues. Your question, Hershey, answered one that I had in the back of my mind. The only last thing I have is that, and I unfortunately don't tell from the paperwork I have which lot is which, but the one at the end of the drive, it looks like the well as placed, looks like it's overlapping into the other properties. Is that simply for sizing? Or is that an issue potentially?
I don't believe there's a well buffer overlapping the properties, except for lot 1, we have a slight overlap into the setback area.
Could you count out the numbers starting where 1 and describe where they are? The map I have doesn't have that clearly. Unfortunately.
Zach, what was the question?
Which is lot 1?
Lot 1, as you come down the private way, it's the first lot on the right.
Yeah.
That's the 3,481 square foot lot.
Okay. All right. And if you were to continue counterclockwise, the 4th one,
Yeah, so as you go counterclockwise, you have lot 2, lot 3, lot 4, lot 5. Lot 4, so the old well placement used to be in the front of the house near the hammer.
okay. I might be looking at an older one.
Yeah, you may be looking at the first version. I had some conversations with Tammy. The well is considered a structure. It can be placed within the wetland setback. We've since relocated well to the rear portion of the lot. Now it's.
All right.
fully-
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else on the Zoom? Planning board member? No, okay, anybody here?
You recognize the voice of their.
What's that?
You
Yep,
recognize the
If
voice?
we're all kind of set, you folks had a,
Yeah,
A question or
one of my
comment?
questions is, did you do a high intensity soils? I noticed that in the Southborough ordinance it is required, and I didn't know if anybody had done that or looked into
Soil
it, soil mapping.
Yep, so we do show soil information on here for the US Department of Agriculture and Natural Resources.
But you didn't do a high
Um,
intensity,
We have not had a high intensity soil survey.
so that is a requirement of the Southborough ordinance. Is that not going to be something someone's going to look at?
I thought that was a requirement for the major site plan subdivisions.
Is it, and this is considered minor? Is that
This is
it
considered minor.
with 5?
Yeah.
Because I know it's so wet there.
Yeah.
I mean, we live right across.
We,
the
we,
river.
we live across the street and we've lived there since 1988. The whole area with the well and the contamination broke out in 1989.
Yeah.
And I do have some serious concerns about that. There are 2 properties, the subject property that you're doing right here. These are main DEP documents.
We have the.
The property, the 57 acres that is adjacent to the property is also a source site for contamination. And I'm surprised that Andrew Patterson's lot required, or water was put in to alleviate that. It was a source of contamination, as well as the 57 acres, which is one of the areas that there was a fair amount of dumping done in this lot owned by Paul Hussey Jr. across the street. And based on the plume that the DEP provided for it too, the aquifer, contaminated aquifer, abuts this property. It's right to it. And I will tell you, I mean, we've had in our well, we live across the river. We've had, in the past 7 or 8 years, we've had a big change in our water quality. So from a personal sense, it does concern me to have 5 more wells possibly affecting the direction of that plume that right now is heading south, southeast and southwest. And so there is concern about that 5 more wells right there.
Sure.
And frankly, as an owner of buying, to have the owner be the responsibility of, hey, here's a piece of land, you deal with the water yourself. I just don't think it's fair to a homeowner. Many of the people on this board don't even remember what happened back in 1989. I mean, you know, it's ancient history. But those of us who are living out there, 2 years ago, there was another well that was found to be contaminated. Years on Hooper Sands, years after this. So while these maps are done in 2020, I agree that there has to be some consideration for the fact that it's not going to just stay there. It's moving, it's migrating, it's underground, and they have removed the stuff that's the surface. I agree with you there. But, you know, it is a real concern for those of us. I know there's an abutter, 14 Great Hill Road as well. They knew nothing about the water when they bought it, you know, and they have serious regrets about it because of the fact that
No one said anything.
no one said anything to them about it. And I think it's a little disingenuous to leave 5 people, go out there, plan on building a $500,000, $600,000 home to find, oh, hey, wait a minute, you're adjacent to a toxic site. You know, it's a concern.
And I'd like to address that. I mean, as a professional engineer, I couldn't agree with you more. And there would be no attempt to hide or any of that. And you know, I think that the board identifying this simply means that it needs to be upfront and present. But you know, in the same light, you know, the DEP did a very thorough review of it. So you know, you can manage risk. There are people that are still living there. And from my professional perspective, as long as you're managing risk and you're adequately assessing it, it could very likely be a site where that would make a fine home. There are still people who live there who are on groundwater wells and that are testing negative. So it's not about rolling dice and throwing darts in the dark.
Right.
It is about being a data-driven decision, in my opinion.
And what happens if in 5 years, these testing wells show positive? Who's going to carry the bag for putting in the water?
Well, so that's a great point. And the DEP letter makes very clear, and as I said, this would need to be part of the record. The DEP letter makes it very clear that that they're absolving themselves and the town from that responsibility. So essentially, it's, if you buy it, you own it.
Yeah.
And, but, you know, that would be part of the process. I mean, there is, you know, you live, I mean, that is the area, right?
And yes, and the two concerns that we really have from having lived there, we lived there when that bridge washed out. I mean, and they have the 100-year plain. I know what a 100-year plain is. I see it on my land. You know, we've got 3,000 feet of FERPA frontage there. And I know what a 100-year floodplain is. It has, in the past 30 years, it's gone over the 100-year floodplain at least a dozen times. I mean, we're talking 500-year floodplain here. This is, and that road coming down the hill, I'm surprised that the Patterson development had the issues that it did with water. And I know what took place out there with him trying to be able to dry up and clear the land and have it, you know, be, so the soils were great. I understand that. That side of the road that this is on, and I'm saying this simply out of fairness for the people who are going to be buying or potentially building out there. That land is a mushroom. I mean, it is very, very, very wet. Now, they may say that there's not any requirements or any impact on the wetlands, but certainly, I'm not even sure there, honestly, I mean, you can see whatever those skunk cabbage that grow there. I mean, they're this tall every spring. I mean, it's a sign of water. And so that would be a
And
concern.
septic systems.
And septic
I
systems.
think about it. I've lived there for 32 years, 33 years. And I think about, I look out at my leach field and go, oh, I hope I'm gonna manage. I didn't know when I built.
When it
out there.
rains,
It's
you
very,
know, you just,
very, very wet. We are underwater there.
But we did have the site delineated by a certified wetland scientist, by FB Environmental. So we show the edge of the wetlands and we show the buffers. And there is a significant upland pocket where the development is taking place.
Pretty far in, or
It is, yeah.
Probably
from
Well,
here,
Cross-
from this little plan, I couldn't tell.
Yeah, yeah. May I? Yeah. So like, I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, a lot of the site is very, very wet. So if you look at, actually, I'll grab my glasses here. A lot of the site is very, very wet, you know, having been out there in the spring. Let's just orient ourselves. So Great Hill Road, so presumably
right.
you're this side of the
cross
river.
diagonally,
Yeah. this
right
way.
there.
Mhm.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. The bridge being here, and so just for point of reference, everybody understand, there's contamination here, there's a little bit up in here, and there's a bunch down in here, and interestingly enough, this section of the parcel, which was the map you were just pointing out, is not identified as having had any contamination, but you're right, it's on all sides. And so this lot and this lot have both tested negative for VOCs as of most recently. But not saying, you know, we're not throwing darts in the dark here. But to your point, for wet, right? So the wet is essentially here. The wet line is right in here. And then if you see the lots here, there's no work being done in this region here, essentially 250 feet off of the river. There's more wet. Where are we at here? So there's the wetland line, sorry. There's more wet right in here, right? And there's no work being done in there. You have a fairly narrow stretch that comes right through here in the middle. It's sort of a high point that is buildable. And then there's a bit more back in here, right? Pocket island that can be worked in, and you know, as an engineer who designs a lot with low impact development these days, one of the things that we really try and do is avoid impacts to wetlands and have sufficient setbacks and buffer zones to maintain water quality. And that has multiple benefits, both for protecting water quality, but also because it's better for the homeowner so that you're not sitting in the middle of something that you probably shouldn't be sitting in.
So I'd like to kind of move this along to do some other business. Tammy, just a question.
Greg,
I don't-
sorry, before we go on, Beth has been wanting to chime in on the line. Do we have a minute for her to speak up? On this topic?
Sure, I didn't realize that. Yeah, Beth, put up your hand so I don't forget.
I did.
Zoom in.
I know. I just wanted to mention, because I am the abutter on the other side of that property. And he had mentioned a couple times, oh, the other two still have well, which is true. But we were told by the state to cement our well and to connect into public public water. And the only reason we haven't is because across the street wanted $10,000 to go into their water system. So just because the abutters are still using their well doesn't necessarily mean we want to at this point.
Understood.
So I have quite a process question. So, from a procedural perspective, whether we want to find the application complete essentially for the preliminary plan, correct? That would be question one for us tonight. How do we go about, we still have time to put conditions on. So the question I have is, can the planning board make a requirement that potable water be guaranteed?
It has to be to get a CO per house.
Okay,
It has to be potable water. And
so the wells are gonna be drilled, even if they're private wells. What's gonna end up happening is they're gonna drill, they're gonna go in, and then we don't know what they're gonna find, and they're gonna build their house, and, okay. I guess, notwithstanding, I think what we're hearing tonight, from a procedural standpoint, and this, it's well done. I don't really personally see a lot of issues hanging there. I think some of the items that came up tonight could probably be addressed between now and what would ultimately be the final permit hearing, the public hearing, and then we have to have a meeting and go about that. So we want to talk about that. But the issue would be, I think what you're hearing tonight, at least from one member, is the water is going to be an issue. And can you have some conversations with the landowner to let them know that there are some concerns, and that before we get into the final submittal, the final review and approval, let's have a plan, a better plan for how we're going to address this issue. Haven't been around government for a long time. It's easy to go in and do this and sell the lots, but at the end of the day, when stuff happens, we'll be knocking on the town's door. It's going to be, it'll be an issue down the road. I foresee that happen. And so I do think it's going to need to be something that's going to have to be addressed. And how, I don't know. And I'm not saying public water, I'm not saying wells. What I'm saying is, I don't think I have enough information right now to really say one way or the other how we're going to do it. But again, if a potable water is required as a condition of a CO, that's a big gamble we're going to be taking out there. And the developer really wouldn't be responsible at that point. It'd be the person building the house. That's kind of a lot to ask, I think. Zach, go ahead.
I don't know enough, being newest on the block here, but is there any mechanism for an escrow type of a thing? I mean, I think the engineer said it earlier, is that it's hard to do as an individual. Easier to do in an organized fashion. But, this is, I think, our time and the mechanism where that maybe that some type of an escrow type of a mechanism along with monitoring wells. Maybe a mechanism, but something has to be thought of, and I'm not the expert on that front, and so I think I'm just agreeing with what you're saying at the end of the day.
I don't know at the end of the day. I think there needs to be some further conversations before it comes back to us. We can understand by the time you come back, take care of some of those other little ancillary issues, the hammerhead, and come back with maybe a better plan on the water about how it could be addressed. I know water is there. It's right there now,
So a question for the board, if they did want to do monitoring wells, what would the process be for board approval on that? For them to,
I don't know.
Would there be any issue, would the board have any issue with the landowner going and installing a couple of wells for monitoring wells,
See, where you're kind of caught in a rock and a hard place here. DEP recommends but doesn't require.
Yep.
To what extent do we push the issue? Is it approved move to go out and do monitoring wells? I'm not a what's it, a hydrogeologist, and I don't understand how water moves underground.
I'm a water resources engineer and I don't even get it.
Yeah,
It's very
so-
complicated.
So, I mean, I can't answer that question now. I think there needs to be some further conversations, and hopefully those conversations can occur to give us something to react to.
So, Mr. Chairman, my question was actually more just the logistical process of approval for the wells, and not so much the process of what the monitoring plan would look like.
So
I
does the
don't
town
really-
have to issue a permit for
Yeah,
that?
yeah, I
Oh,
mean, do
that I
we
don't-
need formal approval from the board to install monitoring wells or bedrock wells?
I don't know that answer.
If you were gonna install the monitoring wells, it would need to be a motion by the board and also a length of time for which the testing and how often the testing would need to be done and paid for by the landowner. Now, you can call the lease a developer. The lease would be responsible for the testing, reporting back to the planning board. And if anything was to come of it, at that point, are they gonna hook into public water? There
So
are so many ifs without.
we can make that a condition of approval or whatever. Yeah,
Right.
having been a recipient and understanding that on the other side, I get it now, okay. Boy, that's a process.
It is.
That's a real,
Can I
that's a big process.
bluntly ask this question? Are we allowed to compel them to approve the public well?
You can as part of their condition of approval. And I encourage them.
Yeah.
When we talked yesterday, right? We talked yesterday. I encourage them to try and get a hold of people to
Yeah.
get numbers, and he's probably working on it. Eric's very good about following through. But getting the numbers to hook into the water, how much each property owner would then be charged to hook into the water. Any additional costs, how much these test wells would be. How much, I know testing the water is gonna be expensive every time they're required to do it. Because you're an engineer, do you know any water, any hydro engineers that you could bounce a few questions off to find answers for the board?
Yeah.
Is that something you could be able to do that would give them the added information for them to make a better condition or recommendation?
Yeah, there's some more scoping that needs to happen.
Yeah,
Correct.
Understood.
Yeah, what I'm saying is, Tammy, thank you, you clarified for me. Yeah, I need more information, but I think I'm hoping you walk away from here realizing, and I know you do. And I know that you'll go back and talk to the leads that the water issue, I think, is a big issue.
Yeah, yeah.
Probably the biggest one overall, you know?
As it should be,
Yeah.
as it should be. I mean, to your point, it needs to be taken quite seriously, and there's no question about it.
So are there any questions? I know nothing up there. Pat, you asked to speak a little while ago, reference the.
Yeah, in
Great
reference to the land trust, and most of the issues we have will be just between Jessica and Jeff, but one question I have is the parking area by the bridge, who owns that land?
It's split between public right of way and the lease right now. So there was a purchase when they were putting the bridge in that bumped out the right of way, and you can see that on the plan. It kind of kicks out and comes around. That was for a laydown area while they were doing the
Right,
construction of the
yeah, I
bridge.
remember you talking about that.
But the pull off does encroach onto that
Okay,
6-acre parcel.
So the part of the donation to the land trust will be that parking area.
Correct. The portion of the parking area that resides on private property. Yeah.
Yeah, and then it's a public right of way, so that has to remain that in perpetuity, public right of way.
Yeah, that's, I mean, the other portion is public right of way.
Yeah.
That's,
How many cars can they park there?
I mean, Rob and I fit side by side in there, so there was 2 comfortably.
Okay, yeah, it's only- yeah, that's fine.
I feel like with a little bit of work, it could be, you could fit 4 cars in there. If we were
Our
expanding.
conversation with Jeff and Jessica, I think it's gonna be kind of maintained as it is now, and not like we don't want it to be a preserve, we don't want it to be, you know, tons of people going out there. It's just, you know, and I don't think the neighbors would want that anyways. The road is too narrow probably, and, you know, and with, you know, 5 more houses, it's gotta be 10 to 15 more cars on a daily basis, in and out. And I don't even know how many houses are up across the street. I didn't know that existed.
There were a few other elements that had been discussed. I think there were requests at the last sketch plan, which was there would be a trail added and there's some minor picnic tables and or a shed to store groundwork maintenance tools. I think that was the other part.
That's out there already?
No, that would be part of the addition to with the conservation land. In that.
Oh, that's
location.
what Jeff and Jessica are saying they will do?
That's correct.
Yeah, okay, well, that's something, I'm glad you said that, because, we'll discuss that with them.
Okay.
With them, we really want to,
You want to just kind of keep it as is and not so much trail development even?
Yeah, I mean, if it's,
Okay.
yeah, if it's just, yeah, but that's a discussion between
Okay.
them and us, not with you, I mean,
Sure.
So
Tammy, those were notes that had been added to the plan set at the recommendation request. So maybe we remove that note and just put, terms to be determined.
That would work.
Okay.
they could do that.
Okay, so procedure, oh, sure, no, go ahead.
They want.
Before we leave the water question, early on in your statement there, that there was mention of the impact of 5 more wells. I inferred that meant what is the impact of that water being drawn out? And I don't know if that in itself.
That's how I understood it.
Yeah, I don't know if that.
The water wasn't drawn 5 more out.
So that question is brought up
Yeah,
and discussed
I
here.
think it's important, I mean, what we've seen in the 33 years we've been there, our well goes down about 125 feet. We have about 18 gallons a minute. In the past 7 years, we've had to have our pump raised 3 times because obviously the water coming into the well has changed. And our static level has dropped as well. And so, being fully self-serving here, it is a concern for me. I don't have the ability of getting town water. There's not town water anywhere near where I am. And so it is a big concern for me. I've got a piece of land across the street that may potentially have 2 more houses on it. We've gone from living on a dirt road to where it is not anti-development. I just want to make sure that I know how it is from when we were out there. This whole thing with the water fell off the map. And it'll be very short-served. And if there is something that's put into this, it has to be something that's ongoing. It may be clear for 5 years, but people live there for 30, 40 years. And that is a concern. And that's the part with water there. The easiest thing would be to hook up to town water. Easy, I say, but I understand the cost implications, but the water is there. And I mean, it is a concern that I have. I mean, I've seen it in 7 years. It has changed dramatically in us. I mean, my well is getting narrower and narrower. I got plenty of flow. My manganese has increased tremendously. All of this has just got to do with impact that's happening with development out there.
Understand.
Okay, Tammy, procedurally from here, I think there needs to be a motion tonight to, I don't see any reason why we wouldn't want to say this is a complete application. And that's in order.
And
So,
you can also have a motion to approve the preliminary plan, which by the ordinance means that you do not accept the final.
yeah, I
But
want to be
you're
careful. Yeah, I
accepting-
want to make sure we're not accepting it yet.
No, you're not accepting, by just accepting the preliminary. And this is something else you can think about, is if you wanted the water issue to go out to a third-party review, that is something you can do based on your ordinance.
Now, we don't lose the opportunity to do that.
At any
Okay.
point in time.
I'd like to think that some conversations could occur between now and the next time we meet,
Yeah, now,
before we say to go out and get a third party.
Yep.
On that one.
now, something else to think about. They're at preliminary. While you're accepting, you're gonna find it complete. Completeness doesn't have anything to do with approval. You can approve the preliminary plan. It doesn't have any bearing on the final plan that comes in, but by your code, the preliminary plan has to be approved. Then, so that the developers, the engineers, the surveyors all know exactly what they're up against, my suggestion would be to set your sidewalk and your public hearing only for the first meeting in October. This way, the developers, the engineers, the surveys, and everybody in the public can hear what the major concerns are. Therefore, they have time to come back for their final 2 weeks later, having answered all of those questions or done research that they might need to do. So therefore, by the end of October, they could be completely approved.
And it's at that point where we could just put a condition on at that point. in time.
Correct.
And so,
Yeah,
okay,
I mean, if there's 200 people that come in regarding the water issue, and I know 200 is probably exaggerating, but if they come in and they pose different points than of what already been brought up, it'll give the gentleman time to take and go and look and see what other information they might need to access to be able to answer these questions. So when they come back for that final review, they have their answers. Hopefully your questions will all be answered. The septic designs will be, septic locations will be placed on the plans. The well relocated on the one, so it looks the way that it needs to. We'll have an answer regarding the road and the pavement as to how many houses. Information like that, by having your site walk and the public hearing, you do not have to make a decision by code, by your ordinance. You do not have to do anything. The public hearing is to hear all of the concerns that are voiced. If no one shows up, no one shows up. But if you do have people come in and voice their concern, whether it be via Zoom or in person, or they email me a question, because that's always an option with it.
Okay.
That is something that
got it.
could happen.
Bill Cole, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, just wanted to, I'm sorry if this is a silly question, but when we talk about going to a third party for review, who covers the cost of that?
The applicant does.
Okay,
It's in the code, right? They
Okay.
submit an escrow account when they first come before us with the sketch plan, and it is paid out of that.
okay, thank you.
So, oh,
No,
someone was gonna say something.
just thinking, I would question why the project would be sent to third-party review, I guess, to get an opinion on the water.
I think it would be a water issue is really kind of what I'm gathering. And so before we say do that now, I'm hoping that there could be some further conversations and come up with a plan that maybe could be presented to us to say, hey, here's how we're going to tackle this issue. Whether that be monitoring wells and the process for the monitoring, how's that going to be handled now and in the future? Maybe the landowner will want to put in public water. I don't know. So I guess all I'm saying is before we say, oh, get a third party, come up with a plan, I'm hoping that from my own perspective, before we say that to you and cause extra expense, you can go back and talk to the developer and have that further conversation, say, hey, it's becoming an issue. We need to come up with a plan for how we think we're going to mitigate the risk. Because at the end of the day, they're going to need clean water to get a certificate of occupancy.
Yeah, so, without shooting myself and my client in the foot, that's probably what I'm about to do right now, but I'm a realist and not trying to hide.
Yeah,
anything
go
here.
ahead.
We can do all the monitoring wells in the world and get good, clear water for 3, 4, 5, 6 months.
Yep.
We sell a lot, they put a well in, and if it flags, there's a problem. Now towns washed from it, the state's washed from it. I'm just thinking logistically, what happens there? That individual has to now bring public water down to move into their home.
Logistically, that's what concerns me is then we're going to be sitting here with a bunch of irate people, whether or not we have any responsibility. They'll be here, they'll be at the council, and they'll be at the town manager's office. And, how could you do this? No, we may not have any risk at the end of the day or liability in depending on the direction we go, and that would be something we want to run by the attorney. But that is the concern. I think the water issue is bigger than, I hate to say that we all realize, but I think there's a bigger issue there.
And as a professional, I don't see that overcoming to the point where we're going to convince people to let us move forward with private wells. So instead of wasting, my client's money, and I'll have a conversation with Jeff if they feel differently, but I talk to them on a daily basis. I don't want to move forward with them having another public hearing and then private review, and they sink 10 grand into this water issue just to get an approval with a condition saying hook up to public water.
Yep.
So if we, I'd almost gonna flip the coin here and say, can we get full approval with a condition to hook up to public water tonight? And avoid additional meetings and additional everything else, because that's the only thing that we're hung up on. And I think Rob agrees with me that if we install monitoring wells, the issue doesn't go away, we just spend more money. And that's the realism of it. The parcel is located within a protected area or a flagged area, and I think realistically, that's the only way that this is gonna move forward. Now, if that cost doesn't want to be absorbed by the leads, that's a conversation that we need to have, but I don't think they want to pay me and Rob to come here for 3 more meetings and do more review and do everything else. That's.
Hey, I think that's an honest assessment. And if that's the direction we want to move in and make that one of the conditions, because I want to go back and think about some other, if there's other conditions. You know, if that's the road we're going to take here. I think that would make your decision-making point that much quicker. It's either going to be a yay or a nay and no one waste time. I respect that. So the process from here then would be to approve the preliminary plan with the condition that they hook up to public water. There are some other conditions that we have talked about in the past. Again, the buffering, but are those largely resolved at this point?
The buffering would need to be listed in the deeds that we cannot mow it.
Yeah.
Cannot cut it down, those typical.
But if we put
buffering.
one condition on for purposes of moving forward,
Mhm, yeah.
we can continue to do more. Okay.
It can be later.
Again, I see the water being the bigger. Go ahead. Bruno.
Is there, since there is, this is lowland areas, a lot of it's wet and stuff, are there concerns with septic systems?
But, you
At
know,
this point, no. At this point, no.
And there should be a packet in there that shows the test pit report done by Mark Hampton.
Yeah.
that,
that was in the
that's,
sketch.
that's all gonna be in numbers. If the soils are in a certain quality and the leaching, that'll, it either works or it doesn't. And if they get the permits for it, then you're good. So, would that be the move going forward then?
Yeah,
And then
and then,
that gives you the direct approach. I understand if you don't want to, and I don't mean this in a negative way, but if you don't want to have those conversations and come back and then we still decide later on that the public water is the way to go, and I understand where you're going with that. I always kind of err more on the, talk it out, but I think that gives you the direct answer you'll need. Is there any further comment?
I appreciate that, and
Yeah.
I think that actually makes a lot more sense, because I have to say, I think placing the risk on people who are desperate to buy homes is sort of, is coercive to me. When especially there's a solution, even if it's an expensive one, there's a solution to this problem without putting people at risk. or making
I mean, they could recover that when the sale on the lot too.
I mean, it just means it makes, sadly, it will make it more expensive, right, will be passed along, but that's better than having non-potable water.
So the motion should be to approve the preliminary plan with the condition of public water. And well, we want to set the public hearing
Yeah.
for the next meeting
Yeah.
and no sidewalk.
well, we can't do the next meeting, notification of the butters by certified mail now
Yeah.
takes almost 2 weeks.
So at the second meeting in October, is that where we are?
We could go,
What
we could go October 5th,
It's the 7th.
This is seventh, okay.
Right, so
Okay,
that
the
will
next
give
meeting,
us-
yeah, October, okay.
the first
Fair
meeting. in
enough, fair
October.
enough, okay.
Yeah,
That's sidewalk and.
And the public hearing.
5:30.
Yeah.
I
we
couldn't
want to
do
do the
5:30, it would
sidewalk
have to
now.
be 6:30 is gonna be really pushing my end.
Yeah, I think we could do
It's gonna be
6 and have the meeting directly afterwards, but it may be dark at that
Yeah.
point. That's the problem.
We have the sidewalk another day, we don't usually, oh, yeah, we did last time, didn't we?
We did it in the early morning.
Yeah, you can, whatever the
Maybe
board
we
wants
would.
to set it and they have a quorum available, they can do a sidewalk.
Everybody good
sidewalk.
with doing it like, so if we have the public hearing on the 5th, you want to do the site walk like at 8 o'clock in the morning sometime?
I'm all for that. But I don't get to vote.
So you could do it like a Saturday morning
Well,
or.
how about the morning of the fifth? Just make a good day of it. You know,
Okay, if that's what you want to do on the fifth,
right?
yeah.
Would
That's up-
everybody be
that's up
okay
to
with
you.
that?
October 5th in the morning?
October fifth at 8 AM in the morning,
And then seven
So
PM.
we did-
and then 7 PM, we have the regular meeting
The regular meeting
with the public hearing. Bill and Zach, would that work if you're able to follow us talking in here?
I'm checking my calendar. I think it would work. Checking.
Yeah, I think I should be good on Wednesday, the 5th.
I'm not available that morning, but I think Eric can cover that.
Yeah, I like either.
Should I wear my muck boots?
Ew.
Snorkel, right? I will, actually.
And I think the reality would be, is there gonna be an opportunity, if that's not the direction that they wanna go, and we'll be able to withdraw all of that, right? If you turn around and say, yeah, we're withdrawing the application based on that, and then we don't have to move forward, and waste anybody's
Yeah,
time.
I mean, I would, as a professional, as we've gotten this far, tell the leads to push forward. And then if they were to not develop, at least they're selling an approved subdivision. We've gone this far, and we have this much work invested into it.
Fair enough.
But I think we're making the right move there. so.
Need a motion.
I do. It would be great to have all of the public water put in there, as well as the public hearing on October 5th, and with a site walk, 8 AM on October 5th.
I make a motion that we accept these preliminary plans as presented with a condition that public water will be provided to the property. Do you need a motion or a second?
No, you don't need a
Yeah, we
motion.
don't. That's it. That's all we need.
So you just need the second.
Second,
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
You're kind of making an assumption here that the water department's going to approve this, right? I mean, that's,
Well, that's true. I mean, you're gonna,
I said, imagine that.
Isn't there?
The water has been running out on the road.
Yeah,
They
the
would
water's
just
on the
have to
road.
extend the line and come in the road.
capacity
I
wise.
understand, but there was a question, the statements made earlier, was that designed for the additional houses and such out there?
Yeah,
Oh,
that's
yes.
something that you would, the water district will look at the plan. And if you approve these as the preliminary plans, I can then get these to the water department on Tuesday and get the question out to them and see if I can get an answer back from them as soon as possible. But because of the situation out on Cooper Sands and now Great Hill, I believe that is big enough to handle it, but I'm not the water expert. That's just in the research I've done.
Oh, sorry, we've run out of water.
You should put a well in.
All right, so motion seconded. We're gonna do a roll call vote, starting with Zoom. Bill?
Aye.
Ack?
Aye.
Greg is aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. There you go.
And the
And
board determined that the sidewalk would be at 8 o'clock on
Yep.
October 5th
Yeah.
and the public hearing at the regular
yeah,
meeting that
7 o'clock,
evening.
yeah.
Hey, Amy, will you give me a
I'll be with it.
All right, let's see here. Next item of business.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Yeah, thank you very much, Terry.
Thank you. All right, folks, moving on.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
What's that?
I think that's by far the best.
We would have sometime.
Oh, no.
And you don't have like, there's no guarantee.
Let's do it.
All right, so listen, there's two more gifts that keep on giving here. We need to finalize the subdivision or the solar farm ordinance. There's been, the ordinance itself is largely done. It comes down to the definition. Tammy sent around a definition. I'm okay with the definition. Does anybody want to propose a change, or does anybody not happy? I'm happy with it. I don't need to talk about it.
Are you talking simply
The
definition?
solar farm definition that Tammy sent around, to me, that's fine.
Next to the last page, I believe, is they're at the top. They're the first two at the top on the next, page 7 of 8.
Greg, I had sent an email earlier today. I have to agree. I feel like Hershey's suggestion of one of our previous meetings or I forget the word, pre-meeting discussion of having a size description of what a solar farm is would be useful. And I guess one of my questions is it right now there's two items in the description as written. First, that it's a large solar array of many panels, and second, that it is more than one resident. Is that, I mean, that's succinct, and I'm trying to bring up the document.
Yeah, you're more or less on track.
I would just, a large, how does that, that seems like a generality, a large solar array. Do we want to get some example at all bigger than 20 kilowatts, bigger than 30 kilowatts? Something that makes sure that a resident or a single resident or resident and their neighbor or their family member aren't going to be constrained to a solar farm constraints. And then, you know, Jen had a good point as well. You know, once you get big, you know, you should be safe regardless, but it's the setbacks and all that that start to also impinge on a resident or a couple people putting something together. I just like the idea that Hershey had suggested, you know, let's quantify maybe more distinctly a large solar array. And I'm suggesting a low number that would encompass most things that would certainly definitely capture anything 2 megawatts and above. Any commercial enterprise is going to be, I would say, a greater than 100 kilowatts. So something in the 30 or 50 kilowatt size is quite small relatively. I don't see any solar farms that are commercial enterprises going to be that big. But anything that sub 100 is going to require, sub 100 greater than 30 or 40 kilowatts is going to require an attention to detail of a group of people or family members or neighbors putting something together that they do it properly, which I think is appropriate. Anyway, that's the only thing I'd add. As a comment on that definition. I did want to ask though, just in terms of when it's proposed, when you have a 1 and a 2 as part of the definition, are they both required or is it either or?
Usually when there's more than one number to a definition, though it could be used as either number 1 or number 2.
Yeah.
If
And
you-
that's
Just like a definition in a dictionary.
okay, and that's what catches me, because then a large is kind of an amorphous number. That's my concern. Do we get to decide what large is for each proposal brought before the board? If so, then we're kind of kicking it down the road.
Yeah, I gotta agree with Zach that, you know, I mean, it's good we distinguish an array, which is sort of for personal use, and we set that aside, and there's no problem around that, but we've been struggling with this whole solar farm thing, and it just seems so open to interpretation what a large, I don't know, we can't put a number on it somehow.
Put a number on it. This is your definition. This is the planning board's definition that will go to the town council.
Like I said, anything greater than 50 is going to be, in my mind, that's commercial, and that's exactly what we want a solar farm definition ordinance to be for.
50 kilowatts?
50 kilowatts.
I think the problem is you think in kilowatts and I think in acres.
Right.
That's how many kilowatt, and I don't think we ever figured that out. We kept, you know,
Right, I could not get an answer to that.
right. So I'd much rather look at an acreage, because to us, I think it's land use, not kilowatt use we care
Yeah.
about.
All right. All right.
Acreage in there.
10, 5, 20.
Yeah, anything more than 5 would, I would say, certainly be 5 acres of solar is a lot. I would say that's definitely on the commercial solar farm scale. If that's like a smallest number.
You know, not for nothing, we've kind of been beating this around for a long time.
So with
I mean,
that,
if there's a, you know, I guess I'll just reiterate, I'm happy with the definition.
I don't mind beating around some more.
Well, do we wanna move it to another meeting?
Questions, you know?
I don't know the whole acreage thing. I think you're asking for trouble, frankly. When you start putting acreage limitations on it. I mean, if the concern is identifying it as one or more, do you want to go 2 or more families or whatever? Or 3 or more, I mean, that's fine if 3 people want to get together and do it. I think,
But this isn't the one that says if a few people get together to do it, we're okay with it. This is the one that actually the whole ordinance, right?
Yeah,
This is the whole commercial thing we're trying to solve. So the solar farm definition is the definition that this entire ordinance talks about. And it's the one where we're worried about commercial development and where it will go. So in that sense, anything larger than 5 is going to be the commercial development, 5 acres. Anything below it will be these little ones where people want to get together and do it together, fine by me.
well, the only problem is, on 5 acres, you can get 2 or 3 kilowatts of power coming off it, hence you're into a solar farm. By definition, because now you gotta reach out to CMP to make sure they can accept it at our stations, at our substations. That was that big.
I thought it was 2 megawatts that were left over.
I think
We're
it-
already, we're already requiring maximum 2 megawatt, right? And they're gonna have to be approved.
That's right.
And we
Because
only,
that's all we got left.
that's all we have left, right?
Yeah,
Unless a developer is willing to put out $6 or $7 million to get the substation increased, upgraded. A large one comes forward. I don't know. I don't have anybody in the wings waiting. Nobody's reached out to me. I don't have anything for them. And Joe Delatorre had raised his hand earlier, just a minute ago, basically.
well, we can get to Joe if we have, you know. Getting kind of late, folks. Is there going to be a motion or something to do here? Or are you going to want more time to work it out? Someone needs to propose something.
Right, if somebody wants to change the definition, I need it in writing. It's that simple. Need it in writing to know what to put in here.
yeah. I put something in email. I'm sorry, Tammy, it was earlier this morning. I probably way too late for today's meeting.
Well, I
If that's,
thought it had sent out, but there was no definition there. It was just the links to go in and look at somebody else's code or try to find the code for the
Yeah.
solar.
that was one.
Thought your email was, rather than defining it as 1 or more, we're talking about the residential areas. I don't remember the number you used, but it was obviously greater than 1. And I'm talking about part 2 of the definition. Is that where you were proposing a higher number so that the residential areas could do what they wanted to do?
I think if we, and I'll send an email right after date. You know, I don't know where else we get to discuss this, but I would propose we say 1 acre or more of solar coverage, you know, completely covered. That looks like it's quite a few kilowatts. As part of the first part, you've got 1 and you've got 2. 2 is 2 or more residents. I'll leave that alone. I don't want to.
Okay, so you're saying that I can- a 1 acre or greater.
Yeah.
Anybody want to, is that a motion?
That might be. This is awful.
Is that a motion, Zach?
Move that we adjust the definition to be 1 acre or greater for the first part of the current definition
So
as
it would
proposed in email.
an installation or area greater than 1 acre?
Land in which a large number of.
Okay. So you're proposing to add in an installation or area of land greater than 1 acre in which a large number of solar panels are set up in order to generate electricity. Yes?
And do we need to put
Yes, 1 total acre, complete acre, I mean. Yeah.
And,
Right, and I don't know what people assume 1 acre could be less than an acre, and that's not what we're saying.
and you want the same thing in part 2?
I think part 2, he's saying to leave
Okay.
alone.
Part 2
So,
is just residents.
That's fine.
so,
I second his motion.
okay, it's been moved second. Is any further conversation? Is there any comment? Okay, Burnell, do you have anything? Okay, all in favor of that motion?
Aye.
Hi,
Sorry. Okay, well, the motion's passed. I can go along with 1 acre, but that's fine.
Thank you.
Okay.
And I would say that's it. Is there a motion to approve? No, we're done. So is there a motion to adopt the ordinance overall along with the definition and send that off to the town council?
I have a couple more, at least one other question here.
Okay.
Maybe it's process that ends up in that, but in the
Page number.
right thing, 5, 7,
What page are you on?
5.
5
Five, great.
blueprint. That's the new, right? Paragraph, what, I3.
Okay.
The process here for determining these decommissioning costs and such, how is that done? And is that,
They
do we
submit it,
give,
they submit it to the state determines the dollar amount. We can request the 125%. And they understand that being in the ordinance. But when it comes back from the decommissioning folks, that the decommissioning plan has been approved, they will also take and set a dollar amount. And that dollar amount is usually what they turn over.
is that subject to our approval,
Nope,
further approval at that time?
nope, because it's coming from, I believe it's Maine DEP that approves the decommissioning plans. They're the ones that set the dollar amount. You're a developer, you come in, you want to put in $100 million for easy numbers. Solar array, you're gonna upgrade the substation, you're gonna come in, you get approval. As part of the approval process, they're gonna provide a bond for the 125%. It will go to the state for the decommissioning plan. When they get it back, the state will provide a number. We will release that bond to only maintain whatever the decommissioning dollar amount is. That's how I've seen it done in the past.
Okay, there's also discussion of inflation here.
Have to do that every 5 years. They have to submit for review. And if you look at a decommissioning plan that's already come in, right in there, findings of facts, conditions of approval, they will resubmit it to have the decommissioning dollar amount bond.
Should we just add at the end per state regulation or per state review or?
No, because it's automatic. It's automatic, it has to.
No,
Well,
I
what
get
we're-
that, but
what we're
this
saying
makes
here
it
is
sound
one
like
thing.
it's our
So,
ordinance, but it's really not. It's really,
yeah, this
The
comes out of,
the
this is out of our
125%
hands, then,
would
right?
be your,
oh, I
would be
see.
your ordinance.
Would be us.
Okay.
Okay.
But then when they send their actual plan and what's been approved by the planning board to Maine DEP for the decommissioning
Okay,
review,
all right, all right.
that's when you'll find that the dollar amount sometimes goes way up and sometimes comes down a little bit.
So except for that, the 125 number in this case, this is out of our hands. It's a state.
Yeah.
Thing, they determine inflation.
Yeah,
Things
so
like
in
this.
5 years, you can ask them to go through the decommissioning process again to determine the bond rate. That is all part of it, and that is part of your ordinance if you approve it this way to go forward to the town council.
So what if someone doesn't come up with the bucks at that time?
Then
Yeah.
they forfeit, they don't do their solar array. They sell the property, they pay their bills, somebody else buys it, comes back.
What's
Sounds like we could eventually, the town could be ending up with the field of,
No,
Whatever.
you've got it in 2 zones, I1 and I2, that's it. Those are the only zones you're allowed to have solar arrays go into in your ordinance. That's what you're proposing.
but this is okay, but this is an established system that's been. used.
Yeah.
Okay.
we have a motion?
Yeah, it was open for further conversation. The motion seconded. Do you have anything further?
Yeah. There's someplace here, it said the things that they had to tear down and it said et cetera before, I believe. And it was changed. forgot the et cetera.
Sorry, where are you? There, where? Are you?
I'm have to look into here.
Okay.
Was it the vegetation issue?
No, it's,
Is it number one under the decommissioning and abandonment?
one second.
Yeah, the
Page
blue
5.
portion, the blue portion was also added by the town attorney.
That came up with the whole, what were we gonna do on the bonding and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And we said very quickly, let the town attorney come up with the language on that, because that's really a big town issue, not ours.
And number four, it takes care of it if the person fails to do it. That's what the bond is used for.
Mhm.
Okay, it's getting late.
What was your concern, Bernard?
Yeah, there was, it was talking about the different stuff that had to be returned back to
Return to natural
natural state.
vegetation?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's in there. Stabilization and or revegetation by any native species and or northern New England species on the site if necessary.
I found the one that you
And then
sent you.
then the decommissioning, it also should address that.
Page 3.
oh yeah, end of life restoration.
And that includes the restoration and the stabilization and revegetation with main native species.
Yeah. Um,
Can we table this, finish it up next week or next meeting? And so we can
I
make
think
sure-
me-
address everything?
then I think. End of life, okay. Oh, yeah, it is in here, okay. F1. Okay, they changed all the wording, they just, now they, instead of saying et cetera, which is fine, they defined some things. But I think it also should say in there to, either before that or afterwards, to include but not limited to those items listed there. Keep it open, but they have to do everything that's there, not just,
Included, but not limited to, so
Yes,
F1,
yes.
page 3 of 8. And where the word et cetera is crossed off, Brunel is recommending the,
including but not limited to.
wants to include the phrase included but not limited to.
Yeah,
Is there a friendly amendment for someone who made and seconded the motion to add that language in? Who made the motion?
Zach did.
Zach, can you just incorporate that in your motion? You motion to approve and move on to the planning board. Can you modify your motion on F1? The word et cetera was crossed off. Can you add in to that motion, including but not limited to?
Yes, I would be happy to amend my motion to add including but not limited to for F1.
Thank you. And Hershey, do we still have your second?
Second.
Okay, any further conversation? Roll call.
Just a comment. I put the exact, Tammy, you asked for the exact wording. I put it in exact writing saying what we said here, 1 acre, total coverage. I put it in email so that I hope it's very explicitly clear.
Okay, thank you.
Aim is to try and make it as clear as possible, but yes, I'm ready to roll call.
So you're just adding that 1 acre to section 1 of the definition.
1 acre of total coverage. I'm trying not to say, you know, you can only have solar in 1 acre of a property. But 1 acre of the total coverage of the panels.
Okay.
That's the intention. And I tried to put it in writing so that we're very clear. Other than that,
All in favor, roll call, Bill Cole,
aye.
Zach is aye, Brunel, Greg, aye. Great, done.
I move we adjourn.
No, you have one motion you need to rescind. You have one more item on your agenda. For the LID ordinance was sent to the town council. We need to rescind that one and make the motion to go to Maine DEP.
Who made the original motion?
What was the idea?
The low impact design,
Oh.
you did it when you were on Zoom.
What are you gonna do?
You need to rescind your motion regarding the LID ordinance
Being advanced.
I motion that I rescind my motion
for the
for
LID.
the LID ordinance.
Can you make the following motion
And I replace it with the following motion
to forward the LID model ordinance
for the model LID ordinance
to Maine DEP for their processing?
to Maine DEP for their processing. This is in the oath of office. Okay.
Okay,
I need
second,
a second.
I'll second. Okay, any further conversation?
May I make one clarifying question on our application?
Time has come and gone for that, Sam.
Yeah.
It's going to third party at this point. If you have a
Okay, is
question,
there,
name with Tammy at this point.
okay, and she's able to clarify with you anything I ask her prior to the next meeting, or?
If he needs any further clarifications, it may or may not have to come back to another board meeting. She'll let you know.
Okay,
You, all in favor, Bill Cole,
Aye.
Zach.
Aye.
Brunel.
Aye.
Greg, aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Hey, move to second it. Bill.
Second, or aye.
Aye.
Zach, aye. Aye, aye, aye. Okay, great. Thank you. We're adjourned, everybody.